This is one of those episodes where the offseason rumor mill connects like 5 different teams and like 10 different deals, because while the NBA seems to be waiting on what happens with Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Celtics with the Celtics still certainly, the Miami Heat pushing, and now Boston may have a plan B in Trey Murphy, while Portland also is circling around Jaylen Brown if he's really available. The Minnesota Timberwolves could be looking to trade Derrick White, and the Detroit Pistons are trying to land Tyler Herro as part of a 3-team trade that would send Giannis to Miami. We're going to talk about all those rumors plus more and what's going on around this crazy NBA offseason right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball and NBA related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And it seems like things may be a little bit frozen right now for around the NBA, because it seems like a lot of teams are starting to set up their backup plans if they're not able to land Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, we're going to talk about some of those teams and what the reported backup plans are right now, but it does seem like Giannis right now has the NBA frozen in a way, and teams are waiting on that first domino to fall, because a lot of teams do not want to give up assets that they could use to pursue Giannis Antetokounmpo if he becomes available. Boston, Miami, Portland, Detroit, and even New Orleans are somehow tied to the Giannis Antetokounmpo market. Not saying all those teams are trying to land Giannis, but a lot of those teams are trying to get pieces that land around the Giannis trade, with Jaylen Brown, Tyler Herro, Trey Murphy, all picks and players that could move as part of a Giannis trade depending on things that are going to happen, right? So teams don't want to make their second best move before knowing if that Giannis deal is going to go through or not, right? And I do think the other side of this is a little bit that teams are using the Giannis thing as leverage, right? They're using that. Boston maybe leaking interest to help pressure Miami or Milwaukee, right? Miami as well could be floating plan B names to avoid looking desperate, like all their chips in the Giannis Antetokounmpo basket. And with Portland's interest in Jaylen Brown, it could be real, right? But it also could be a way to assert themselves in larger conversations to be the third team in trades, right? So this trade rumor right now isn't just about Giannis, right? It's about the entire NBA and the dominoes that could fall if Giannis is moved. I once described the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade rumors as this, saying that, that it's like standing back and waiting on that first domino to fall to then see where all the dominoes after him end up going, right? And that's really what's happening right now. So let's jump into a couple of those rumors, namely, first off, the Celtics, right? I was kind of surprised to hear that the Celtics would seriously consider moving Jaylen Brown, even for Giannis, just because Jaylen Brown just showed them so much in the season where they had a piecemeal roster together. They didn't have any real front court depth. Jason Tatum was hurt for the majority of the season, and he still led them to one of the best records in the Eastern Conference for sure. But reportedly, Trey Murphy seems to be their backup plan if they don't land Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, I do think this is a smarter move for the Celtics. I think this is a way smarter move for the Celtics. One, Murphy fits the Boston Celtics style already, with shooting, his size, his athleticism, and his defensive switchability fit right in with what the Boston Celtics like to do. He's younger and he's cheaper than a big superstar trade, and he's still a player that can still put 20 on your neck, right? And I still think in the right situation and scenario that we could see the way in conversation around Trey Murphy change and shift, because he's going to have an opportunity to play meaningful basketball for maybe the first real time in his career, right? It also keeps the Boston Celtics from having to gut their future first-round picks in a move for Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? But is Trey Murphy going to be enough? And for those that are new to the show, we like to talk about both sides. So my personal opinion is I think Trey Murphy is a very smart plan B for the Boston Celtics. I think it just fits so much in what they have going on. But let's talk about the flip side of that. Why Trey Murphy may not be enough, right? First, Giannis Antetokounmpo clearly is a star in this league. There's just no doubt about it, right? And with Boston already having a championship-level foundation, adding a player like Giannis to what's already happened with a team that's already terrifying and stuff like that, it just makes more sense, right? And if the Celtics have a real chance to land Giannis, settling for Trey Murphy would feel maybe a little bit too conservative to some Boston Celtics fans. I don't know. Like I said, my personal opinion is I think Trey Murphy would be a perfect acquisition for him, because it just makes so much sense with the style of play. And I don't think you have to give up Jaylen Brown in a move like that, nor nearly as many first-round picks either, right? So Trey Murphy does, of course, help. But, of course, you're looking at Giannis to actually change the status quo and the power structure for the Boston Celtics in how they play if that's what you decide to pursue, right? And so from a Boston Celtics fans, or even anybody, I want to ask yourself this. Would you rather make a clean and smart move for Trey Murphy or a swing move and a bigger upside move in trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. But speaking of the Celtics players, Jaylen Brown. Is Jaylen Brown and the Portland Trail Blazers' interest real, right? That's the question I want to ask here, because could they pursue Jaylen Brown outside of even, the framework of a Giannis Antetokounmpo being the third team in the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade? Here's why I do think Portland should be chasing Jaylen Brown. He immediately fills a spot that the Portland Trail Blazers need of a legit go-to two-way player on that team, right? Like they have two-way players, but I wouldn't consider any of those guys elite two-way go-to players, right? So that's a big difference in that. When he'll give Portland a proven NBA All-Star without having to wait years for a player to develop, and it could make a lot of sense there. I think also Portland controlling Milwaukee's future first-round picks does make them put them in a unique situation if a deal goes down between Boston and Giannis, where they can offer something that no other team can, and that's Milwaukee's picks back, which would then be directly affected by how good or not the Milwaukee Bucks are over the next couple of years. And I do think that Jaylen Brown instantly makes the Portland Trail Blazers even more relevant than what they were. But then there's the other side of this conversation. Should Portland really be rushing their timeline right now? Jaylen Brown turns 30 in October, and he has a massive contract to go along with it. Now, while Jaylen Brown has a very long career left ahead of him, right? I think Jaylen Brown can easily play another 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Like, I wouldn't be surprised with how long players are playing now, right? So Portland's young core, you have to ask yourself, is that young core ready to maximize on this window now if you get Jaylen Brown? And then what does that look like for you as far as being a legit contender in the Western Conference, who's already deep with the OKC Thunder, the San Antonio Spurs, the Denver Nuggets, the Houston Rockets, all those type of teams that are already miles above you? Does this trade get you closer to those teams? And then how close does it legitimately get you to being able to come out of the West and go to the NBA Finals? That's a huge question that you have to ask there. Now, there's tons of upside still with this Boston Celtics roster. Donovan Clingan still scratching the surface of who he can become. Shaedon Sharpe may go on a move like this, but Shaedon Sharpe still scratching the surface. Denny Advia had a major leap last year, trying to see how he can build off that. And Scoot Henderson, still a major question in regards to Scoot and exactly who Scoot Henderson can turn into and how good he can. So the question the Blazers have to ask themselves is that if they're trying to win now, does this get you close enough, or taking more time to build correctly and pace more patiently, is that the better long-term play for you? And that's what the Portland Trail Blazers would have to ask here, right? This is the type of move that either completely wakes up a franchise, or it can literally trap you in the middle if you give up too much. And then you could have a star-level player in Jaylen Brown, but then still be in the middle of the pack, especially in the Western Conference as well, and not really make that necessary forward movement that you wanted to make with your roster and making this trade. And that's the question that you have to ask here. And I guess we'll see which side of it that the Portland Trail Blazers, again, and I think this is still very much so tied to Giannis Antetokounmpo trade rumors, so we'll see what's going to happen. But the question I want to throw to you guys in this one, let's say Boston doesn't land Giannis. Are you still, or would you then try to get into some type of 3-team trade, maybe with the Pelicans and Trey Murphy, Jaylen Brown, and the Portland Trail Blazers? Would you still, if you're Portland, try to pursue and see if there's any other framework that can still land you Jaylen Brown? I don't think that it's possible, but where do things have happened in the NBA? Next up, the Minnesota Timberwolves are the next team that we have to talk about. And there's rumors now going on that the Minnesota Timberwolves are reportedly interested in Derrick White. This comes from Sam Amick of The Athletic, who says this. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been linked to several star-level players in trade room. For now, Minnesota's interest is trying to trade for Giannis has cooled. The Wolves are looking to add another guard, however. Minnesota reportedly has interest in Derrick White for the Boston Celtics. White is set to make $30 million this season, with $67 million owed to him through the 2028-29 season. The final season is a player option for White. So I don't think we've heard any real indications that the Boston Celtics are trying to move Derrick White right now. Now, that's not something that I think is legitimate or that we've heard. So Sam Amick is he telling us something that we haven't heard, or is he just speculating here? I do think that the sides of this argument for Minnesota, though, is that Derrick White is exactly what the Minnesota Timberwolves need. He brings defense, he brings playoff experience, he brings composure and shooting upside that the Minnesota Timberwolves drastically need on that team. Anthony Edwards needs another trusted ball handler as well and decision maker on that team, and we've seen that in the playoffs for them in the last couple of years. White fits next to Ant because he doesn't need to dominate the ball to be effective on the offensive side of the ball, and with how Anthony Edwards has grown as a shooter and as a facilitator over the last couple of years, this makes sense. You're adding winning players, not just names, right? But the flip side of this, why this trade may not make sense. Boston has not really shown big signs that they're looking to move Derrick White right now, not even part of a larger trade. I do think Minnesota is very limited on their draft capital as well. And then matching salary may require Julius Randle, and Boston may just not have any use for a player like Julius Randle, even with them needing some front court depth. And I just don't know if I see that, right? So this could require a third team to get this deal done, and I just don't know if it's there. But one could say, hey, if the Timberwolves are looking to dump off a Rudy Gobert or Julius Randle contract anyway, there's teams out there that would be willing to take on that salary for what you have. I just don't know, right? Like Derrick White fits the Wolves and what they're trying to do. It just because a perfect idea is there and a player that fits seamlessly could be there, it doesn't mean that the trade that makes it make sense is going to be there. And I think that's what this rumor ultimately comes down to, and we'll see, right? Now, also, we're starting to hear more and more about what the plan B options are for the Miami Heat if they strike out on Giannis. And the question here is that, do these plan B actually, do they sound smart or do they sound more desperate, right? So what we're hearing now is that the Miami Heat could pivot towards Kawhi Leonard and Ja Morant, which this is the first time that we've heard this. But this one comes also from Sam Eggman that says this. The Miami Heat are continue to push for a trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks. However, should those trade talks break down, Miami is ready to move to plan B options. Those options could include the previously reported Kawhi Leonard of the LA Clippers or Ja Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies. The challenge with Leonard is that there are several layers of uncertainty. It's unclear if the Clippers have any interest in moving the veteran ring, in addition to the investigation into the alleged salary cap circumvention between Leonard and the Clippers is still playing out. Some teams may be wary of dealing for Leonard without a resolution to that situation. As for Morant, Miami has long had interest in the point guard. The Grizzlies are expected to work with Morant to find a fresh start. Some see the Heat as an ideal place to help the former All-Star get his career back on track. Now, I've been wanting to say that. I do think coming to Heat culture could be great for Ja Morant. I think it kind of fits what the situation you want Ja is in, right? But I do think this, for the side of this, that this is a smart lineup for the Miami Heat is simple this. You can't wait around for Giannis in Milwaukee for forever, right? Now, I do think that the Miami Heat, knowing Pat Riley, they're going to wait as long as they can. But if it gets to a point where it just seems like Milwaukee is just playing with them, you got to move on. Like Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, still gives them an elite playoff upside and championship level upside as well. Ja Morant, he could be worth the gamble and hope that a culture reset helps him re-achieve when he was 3 years talked about as a player that could have been the next face of the league, right? Miami has always been willing to bet on distressed stars. That's something that's always been part of their culture. And so to do that now with Ja or with Kawhi, or God forbid you find a way to get both of them in there, shout out to Miami for getting that done. Like I would have to commend them for at least still finding a way to be aggressive. Miami has been mentioned in a lot of trade rumors over the last few years that ultimately they've never pulled the trigger on because they didn't want to give up young assets. Many will remember they didn't want to give up Jaime Jaquez in a Dame Lillard trade, which then ended up with Dame going to Milwaukee, right? Like that's the case of that. Now, I do think the other side of this is that there are dangers to either side of this. Kawhi Leonard comes with major injury questions, the off-court certainty, which I don't think he's going to be banned from the NBA or anything if salary cap circumvention is found out there. Like I don't think they're like this isn't even the contract he's on now isn't even the contract that he would have signed for that. This is a contract since then. Ja does come with the risk of the contract questions, the fit concerns, and if he's going to wake back up and be the player that we saw before that is so talented, right? I do think missing out on Giannis and forcing a plan B could if you just try to do a trade, it could put you into a bad long-term contract. But the Heat do need a superstar. Every answer isn't necessarily the right answer. Miami's always going to be star hunting. That's going to be something that's always there, right? But there's a thin line between aggressiveness and recklessness, and that's where they're going to have to strike with that. Our last topic of the day before we get up out of here today, that's Tyler Herro reportedly could land in Detroit as part of a 3-team trade that would send Giannis somewhere else. So this one also comes from Mark Stein of the Stein Line, who says this. The Detroit Pistons are emerging as a potential third team to help facilitate a trade involving Giannis moving to the Heat, sources have told Mark Stein. The Pistons would ultimately receive Tyler Herro in return. The Pistons are looking to add shooting this offseason and have been rumored in deals for Kyrie Irving or Trey Murphy III. The team is also reportedly interested in Zach LaVine, Kobe White, and Isaiah Joe. Now, here's the thing. Tyler Herro, say what you will about Tyler Herro, but I think for a team that he's not looked at to be the main guy, right? And I think he wouldn't even be looked at to be one of the two main scorers. You have Jalen Duren, you have Cade Cunningham, but the Detroit Pistons need shooting badly. And Tyler Herro fits that bill, right? He gives them scoring, he gives them spacing, and he gives them more offensive firepower that they desperately need there, right? And I do think that Miami's going to have to move Herro as part of the Giannis trade, and Milwaukee could just not want Tyler Herro back, reroute him to Detroit for picks, whatever it is. And so while Milwaukee may prefer the draft assets part of this, and building a young team, getting Tyler Herro and taking back picks instead actually makes a lot of sense when you talk about it on paper. But Detroit still has to be careful with this too. Tyler Herro is a really good scorer, but does he really drastically change the Detroit Pistons ceiling? That's the question that you have to ask here. They've been linked to a lot of shooting targets, so they don't have to overpay for anybody. That's a big thing there as well. And if Detroit is just helping Miami get Giannis, they better make sure that they get the best damn value, because that's a team that you're going to have to compete with in the Eastern Conference, right? So Herro's contract and role, do they match the long-term timeline of the Detroit Pistons? That's the ultimate question here. Is Tyler Herro the shooter that Detroit needs, or is Detroit just being used to dump off salary, but they still can find benefit for that? That's the question that they have to ask here, and I guess we're going to see. But that's going to do it for today's episode, y'all. But I want to hear from you guys. If you're Boston, are you pushing everything in for Giannis, or would you rather pivot to Trey Murphy, right, and keep more flexibility? And if you're Portland, are you giving up real assets to get Jaylen Brown into that team? And do you think Miami Heat's plan Bs for Ja Morant or Kawhi Leonard, do you think that actually makes sense? Drop your comments down in the comment section. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave us a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything NBA and basketball related, and I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
Been a presentation of the Breaks Media.